This is called Fireflies, and it's a story about a park full of fireflies and falling in love. And this happened, I don't know, 25 years ago. I was a grad student in Iowa City, summertime, and one of those wonderful long summers with hot nights. And Iowa City in the summertime is mostly empty. It's wonderfully empty. Thousands of students go home, and I wasn't teaching any courses. I was writing a novel, and I was taking only one course. It was called PhD French. All you had to learn how to do was read French. Um, I was going out to bars every night. I would study my French, and then I'd go out to bars, and I had to memorize 40 vocabulary words and a new verb tense every single night, and I would do that, and then I'd go hang out. The town, man, it seemed like it was full of crazy people. There actually was, I guess, like a mental hospital in Iowa City or something. But anyway, it seems like there's a lot of outpatients, and I kept meeting all these crazy people. The crazy people seemed kind of attracted to me, at least it felt that way. I met this guy named, we used to call him Poor Will. He always had these, he had been in, I think he'd been like in an asylum for a few years, and then he had got out and moved to Iowa City, and he would always have terrible things happening to him, just terrible things happening. And we'd always go, poor Will, poor Will. So that's what everybody called him, poor Will, like that was actually his name. He was studying music therapy, and I remember he was hoping to have a whole career as a. I don't even know if there is such a career as music therapist, but that's what he was hoping he could become. I remember one time he suddenly started smoking a pipe, and he told me he thought, crazy people, that his patients would really feel much more comfortable in his presence if he was just smoking a pipe. And I remember kind of gently telling him, I think pipes have kind of gone out of fashion. No, 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 he didn't think so. It would that smoke. It would just have a very tranquilizing, peaceful. They'd play music and smoke his pipe, and the crazy people would just get better. I remember one time he finally saved up enough money. He had welfare or something like that, and he saved up enough money, bought a car, this old junker, and he didn't even have that car like 3 or 4 days. It's so hard to find parking in Iowa City. It's just not really a good place for parking. And city towed away his car, impounded his car, and he found out he had to pay a fine, or he couldn't even get his car back. And he would save up and finally have it, and then he would go back, and he would find out that at so much time, and like every night he had to, the fine got bigger, and he had to pay like rent on the impoundment yard, and he never ever got that car back. The city just basically took his car. Poor Will, poor Will. There was another guy named Mad Bob. Mad Bob. I remember one time I was in a bar with this girl, and she's kind of shy young girl, and she had been reading Herman Hesse. I don't know if you've ever read the novelist Herman Hesse, but she was kind of proud of herself, and this guy, we called him Mad Bob because he was crazy, and she kind of he was just staring at her with these beady eyes, and finally she got kind of nervous, and she said, have you ever read Herman Hesse? And he looked at her really, crazy, and he said, I read Herman Hesse in my dreams. There were a lot of people like that in Iowa City. Yeah, Mad Bob kind of disappeared, and what I heard was he had been running around in a dorm, in one of the lounges in one of the dorms, yelling. See if I can remember what he was yelling. My IQ is multiplying so fast that my head is expanding and it's going to explode. Run, run! Well, Mad Bob. Um, I knew a lot of grad students. Yeah, I had, the grad students. I sometimes the things that would be argued about were so arcane and bizarre that I began to kind of wonder if even the grad students that I knew, my friends, were possibly also a little insane. I remember one guy saying that the worship of Edgar Allan Poe was ruining American culture. And our only hope was Henry James. Apparently, what we really needed to be reading was Henry James. I knew a guy who kind of thought of himself as the reincarnation of T.S. Eliot. He too thought maybe he could save American literature. I remember a lot of people quoting, Freud and these kind of French quacks like I don't know, Derrida and Foucault, and of course a lot of people quoting Karl Marx, as if anybody could take this stuff seriously, even in the 1980s. And I began to think, maybe everybody in the summer in Iowa City is, stark raving mad. Sanity, it seemed to me the one thing that really did seem sane and good to me was Susie. I was falling in love with this woman named Susie that I had known years ago, and she lived on the West Coast, and I hadn't seen her in like a decade. And one time she wrote me a letter, and I wrote her back, and she wrote, and we just kept writing. And after a while, we were writing like every day. And I was, it was just such an odd relationship. We never talked on the phone. We never saw each other, but every day I'd get one of these wonderful letters, and I kind of recommend this as a way to fall in love. You can't fall into bed, you can't do any of the normal things that people do. All you can do is communicate with one another. And her letters were full of wit and humor and little drawings. Even her handwriting seemed kind of elegant and witty to me. And finally, a friend of mine got married on the West Coast, and he wanted me to be in his wedding. So I flew out there, and she came up. She'd been living in California, and she came up, and we rendezvoused in Seattle. And man, I was head over heels in love. She went back. I went back. I flew back to Iowa City. She went back to California and loaded up all her possessions and told me she was moving out to me. She's going to live with me. And she had this little love truck. That's what they were called, LUV. I think it meant light utility vehicle. Love. And man, here was I was crazy happy. I was getting drunk every night, and I was writing a novel and studying French verbs, and then I'd go out and drink at a bar and talk to crazy grad students, and uh, I'd take a bus to get downtown. Then I'd walk all the way home. The buses quit running, I think, at midnight, and it was warm, and stars were out. I'd stop on a hill just above this little hidden park, and I would always call it the Valley of Fireflies. If you just stood there in the darkness and let your eyes adjust, you'd see, 4, 5, 6 fireflies, and then you'd realize, oh my God, there's like 20 fireflies, and then you would realize there's hundreds, maybe there's 1,000 fireflies. They say, I don't know, they're mating. They're like fireflies falling in love, just winking there. It was the most beautiful thing. The valley full of fireflies, and everything seemed possible. I would write novels and plays and fall in love and get married and have kids, and I'd get my doctorate, and I'd become a professor, and my students would love me, and I'd learn all those damn French verbs, because that's how it is when you are drunk and in love and standing above a park full of fireflies on a hot summer night.